Hello, my name is Tobias Summit and I'm in AVANTASIA and you're watching Tuonela magazine. The break was broken. I don't know. I came home from the Ghost Lights tour, and I knew it was time for a break, because I was looking back at, well, I had written 17 albums, done 10 world tours in 15 years or something like that, and 5,000 interviews, and I'd organized everything, and so I was the driving force, and the driving force was running out of gasoline. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna have a break, because also you have to realize that you have to make sure as a musician that you don't become part of a machinery, and that you don't fall into a routine where others set the pace for what you do. You cannot do anything just because it's in the schedule, but it automatically happens after a while. In a band, in the music industry, it's taken for granted. Oh, he's done an album last year, he's done an album the year before, and an album the year before. He's going to do one next year, one next year, one the year after, one the year after. No. And I had no record deal. Not with that guy, not with AVANTASIA. And I felt I needed a break. So I said, okay, I'm not going to do anything. We're going to celebrate the 25th anniversary with that guy. We're going to do Monuments. We're going to do a brief Monuments tour, which wasn't so brief, but it was like, I don't know, 25 shows or something like that. Relatively brief. For 20 shows, something like that. Relatively brief. And I thought, okay, I've got to find myself a hobby. I got to recover a little bit and relax. And so I thought, okay, what are you interested in? Oh, you could build a studio. So I built a studio at home. And of course, meanwhile, I still had ideas, because once I had made the decision that there was no deadline, no record contract, no obligation, no schedule, I had ideas all of a sudden, which is not fair. You get ideas when you don't need them, and sometimes when you need them you don't have ideas. So I kept capturing those ideas, and of course I was building the studio. I had great fun in collecting tube equipment, and Sasha helped me with it, and all of a sudden I had built a very nice recording studio at home, actually, with all the equipment. I knew how to operate it. I had great ideas. So what do other men do? They go playing with their play train or toy train, or go into the football pitch and watch other people play football, or do it themselves. I wrote music and recorded it, and I realized that it didn't even feel like work. But the album was, after a while I realized, in brief words, it was a new AVANTASIA album in the making. But I calmed down, and then I said, okay, now that you're recording it, you could also sell it and make some money with it. So I hired an attorney to get myself a record deal, which he managed to do, and here I am, back in the mill. Well, you know, what was different for me this time was that I had a lot of time to, and Sasha as well, because there was no pressure, no deadline. I mean, usually I try to push pressure aside and not think of it, and not think of deadlines and stuff like that. And I always make sure that I don't rush. That the album is something I can live with. I always take responsibility, be it with Edgar or AVANTASIA. It's me who's responsible in the end. It's me who's going to be blamed if something is wrong. So I always have to be happy with it, and I try to take the time that I need for it. But in that case, it was even more time, because in other cases sometimes you simply have a deadline. You have other people who want to make money, who have spent a budget on it, who want that budget back. And you know, there is the industry. There is really certain, nobody really pushes you, but you feel there is pressure on your shoulders. So we should really rush this, and somebody wants to book a tour, and then you have to release the album before the tour is being started. So in that case, I had all the time in the world, and I could simply, and I took the time. I mean, it's been 2.5 years, But I had so many ideas. I have half a new album already done also. Because it kept flowing and flowing, and the material is so embellished because there was so much time putting it together and adding little things and taking little things away and reconsidering little things. Yeah. It was just that this song was so in the vein of Mystery of Blood Red Rose that we did the arrangement, we made the arrangement, and I was singing blah 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 vocals along to it, to the arrangement in the beginning, and I'm blah 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 blah, and I did for fun like Mystery of a Blood Red Rose, and Sasha said, "That's great, I'm getting goosebumps." And I said, "Why is he nuts? What has he smoked?" And Miro said the same thing. He listened to it and said, "That's great, that's a reference to the last album. Yes, that's very smart." So I said, okay, how can I get Mystery of Blood Red Rose into the lyrics? And it actually makes sense. It actually makes sense. Of course, you can bend everything so it makes sense. But that's what I kept. That's the only line I kept from my blah, blah, blah. I kept Mystery of Blood Red Rose. And we thought it was, what I really admit what is great is that it's the beginning of the album. And immediately there is a reference to the previous album. But lyrically, there are two different beasts. It's really funny that the album starts very, very atypical in a way. It starts, yeah, different. It starts with vocals actually. But as the vocalist is the songwriter, so no, seriously, it was not a conscious decision. It just happened, and there is no rules in music, in rock and roll. So it's not very common, but that is not necessarily something bad. The subtitle of Moonglow is Narratives of a Misplaced Entity, and it's about a creature or an entity or a homunculus, so to speak, that is created into an environment that he doesn't find a place for himself in. And it's the creature doesn't really get along, it doesn't connect to the beautiful world around him or around it, and doesn't really it doesn't really arrive emotionally in the world of the bold and the beautiful, and therefore escapes from the beautiful light bright day world. It seeks shelter in the dark, and it turns to the dark in the hope of opening of being at peace with itself and opening a door to a parallel imaginative world that grants him peace and arrival in a place that is made for that creature. So that was my intention was not really to create a novel. I wanted to create a coherent world, and I wanted to create 10 poems that would deal with the feelings and the mental world and the experience and the points of view of that creature. And to me, that concept of a story offered a great way to incorporate my personal thoughts and my personal experience and what I felt like as a kid and still do. I always felt a little different, and I never really felt I belong in my environment. That's why I became a musician, but after you've done 2 records, you again stick out like a sore thumb because you do not do what people expect. And I don't try to be offensive on purpose. I just want to be me, but there is no... I often felt that there is no place for myself. Not in the metal world, and not in the normal world, or whatever you call it. You always... And I think everybody sometimes feels like that. Probably. I don't feel that special. Anyway, I wanted to create a Victorian, dark, eerie, Tim Burton-esque, grotesque, fantastic world that would leave space for my emotions, and so I created an alter ego of mine, a homunculus, a creature cast into a dark Victorian Hammer Studios world inspired by Tim Burton, Arthur Machen, Edgar Allan Poe, who else? Algernon Blackwood, William Somerset Markham, E.T.A. Hoffman, these kinds of, and Hammer Studios, and all that. It is very personal. I mean, I did a lot of things that I tried to do personal stuff every time, and even the most hedonistic, is it hedonistic or hedonistic? But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Stuff that I've done in my life, even with Edgar, when we sometimes had songs like Space Police, they were very, very, very heartfelt lyrics. It was meant like that, and it's not goofy. Only goofy people would think this is goofy. There is something in them, and they've always been honest, my lyrics, and always heartfelt, but I think this album is more therapy than any album I've ever done before. It's also, it deals with the pressure that you have in the music industry. It deals with the pressure that you have when you don't want to live up to a pace, when you don't want to live up to a schedule, when you don't want to let other people down, but at the same time you feel that it is impossible to live up to expectations. And I've been through that. I try to keep the tongue-in-cheek element. I try to see everything not so heavy-hearted. I just try to say, yeah. And sometimes I face these difficulties and these challenges with a certain kind of, egomania and sometimes tongue-in-cheek, I have to say, but sometimes egomaniac and arrogant and just as pretty much as a self-defense. But I had to let out a couple of things, and I didn't want to write them blatantly open, but wrap them up in some fantastic world. And that it just felt good. It's like a letter you write to somebody but you never send. You get things off your chest. And who's interested in it will find something between the lines, and who isn't will just find, hopefully, poetic words. And I feel very, very close to the lyrics, and it's very personal. But as I said, I've always tried to be to deliver personal stuff and do personal music. You could bend it towards fitting into the concept, because down the line, my album is about a nocturnal outsider who's only at peace with himself when darkness falls. And Maniac, it's the same thing. She's only at peace with herself when darkness falls and she's allowed to dance. Then she's becoming herself. So in a way, okay, you can bend it, it fits. But the story behind covering that song was, it was just meant for pure joy. I liked the song. I wanted to do a cover version. Sasha thought it was really, really not a good idea, because he said, it's been done so many times. I said, please, let's do it. So we did it. And he admitted, well, actually, that's my favorite version of it so far. It's a real great song. So we got in Eric Martin to have the duet character and also to have his voice, because it's very, very, it fits that song. It fits that song perfectly. And he said, oh yeah, I know it. It's been a huge hit over here in the US in the 80s too. So, of course, everybody knows that song. I will do it. And then, once the song was done, it was planned to be a cover song, a bonus track. But we decided, because the rest of the album was so sophisticated and almost on the verge of being progressive, and not everything was easily accessible. So we said, it wouldn't maybe do any harm to the album if we had one more light-weighted track. And that's why we decided to put it on the album. When you work with people like that, you of course do that because you want them to give your song something of their expertise, their skills, their experience, their personality, because it's a gift. You would not invite somebody like Hansi Kirsch and say, "Hey Hansi, can you please sing it the way I sing?" That's disrespectful. Why ask Hansi Kirsch then? So he sang pretty much the melody that I sang to him. I sent him the song. He followed my melody, but just by opening his mouth, he makes it his song. And it's funny because he has sung on 2 tracks. One is very aggressive, one is very calm. And it's funny, he said, "Wow, it's a very diverse thing that you're giving me. I can bring out the bard in me and the screamer." And I thought it was funny. Hansi is also very funny. And I liked, well, you have to know him to know what I mean. He's very special, and it was great when I got it back. It's a very, very clean, very silent passage, especially the intro of Raven Child.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm referring to.
It's very demanding, and when we got it back, Sasha and me were just like, we expected Hansi to be good because otherwise we wouldn't have asked him, but that was just simply amazing, and yeah, I'm blessed to work with the best. Well, I don't go to galleries in my free time. Actually, I do go to museums in my free time sometimes when I'm on tour. The Louvre, and watch all these pharaohs and mummies and whatever they had there when this Egyptian exhibition was at the Louvre in Paris. Anyway, I'm not a person who runs into, "Oh, look, what did the painter think when he painted that black triangle?" You know, I'm not one of those persons. But of course, I'm very sensitive to my environment, and I'm sensitive. I am very grateful if my inspiration gets tickled and stimulated. And for example, in my study, I have replica oil paintings of John Atkinson Grimshaw, because I like the way he paints. He inspired Moonglow in a way, big time. Because I look at those paintings when I write those lyrics, parts of them. And when I sit at the piano, I have a painting of John Atkinson Grimshaw right over my piano. And he's basically known for painting realistic, Victorian times realistic night scenes. And a funny thing about him is that back then people were discussing if his work is worth being called art, because he was coloring photographies, and he was painting them in oil. He had a blueprint as a photography of a moonlit night scene, mostly wintry trees, like without leaves, and I love it. The atmosphere is great, and he just colorized the photo. Of course, it's art. It's hard work, and he had big skills, huge skills, and great skills. The right way to phrase it, to say it. So that is inspiring to me. And also I read an article about psychogeography, because I always found it difficult. Some other musicians laugh at me, or some people always thought he's nuts when I said I can't work in that environment. Of course I can. If you put a gun to my head and say, okay, like in Misery, write this song. Okay, do it. Don't break my legs. But it's when you're in a certain atmosphere, I can write different types of things. I function better when I'm in the right atmosphere, in the right mood, surrounded by the right buildings, the right light situation. And there is a term called psychogeography, which kind of which has been, or which scientists came up with, who who found out that actually the environment, I mean, you don't have to be a scientist to find that out, which I think it's weird, but they found out that the environment has a huge impact on certain novelists, writers, painters. It's just, you know, you write differently if you're in a certain environment that you click with. And that's very important to me. That goes for art. I have great imagination if I'm in the right environment, if you feel happy, if you're not under pressure, if you, for example, I wrote most of the album in England, in London, or not most of it, but some of it. And when I'm sitting in a pub and I have those Victorian buildings around me and I'm sitting there, I have a beer in front of me, and then all of a sudden I feel like I'm in a different world. And that's something I need. That has a huge impact on how I work. I cannot simply go into a smelling rehearsing room with egg cartons on the wall and start writing something. Of course it would work, but I don't function very well in these environments. We're doing 10 weeks, 10 or 11 weeks of world tour first, and then subject to demand and offers. No, of course, you know, there have to be festivals that have to be interested in it. Otherwise it doesn't make sense, you know, we have to play a headline slot and we have to play 2 hours, otherwise it doesn't make sense. You cannot play 45 minutes in the afternoon with 10 singers on stage. You know, it depends. If you're asking because of Finland, I hope so, but I don't know yet. Hello, people out there. Thank you for your support, and yeah, and you hopefully will like Moonglow. It's an amazing album. I know. Don't say anything. I know it's an amazing album. It's a great album. We did a great job. But I hope you do a great job too and get the album actually. And thank you for your support, and hope to see you somewhere on tour or somewhere else.